Hey, John. So I'm really excited to be joined by you today to talk about this film. First off, congratulations on the project. I got to check it out and really enjoyed it. Obviously, won't go into spoilers, but let's just say I wasn't expecting the film to kind of take a change where it does in the movie.
Totally.
To kind of start things off for you, where did you kind of come up with the idea initially?
Sure. I always wanted to tell a story where there's a character kind of like covered in blood and on the run, and we follow them, and we don't know why they're running, but just because they're trying to escape, we naturally align with them. And then having lived through a personal experience called the global pandemic, I kind of started influencing that, infusing that in the narrative. And then I started thinking about, okay, who's the character chasing them and how to make these stories kind of aligned. And that's really the origin of the film.
Wow, so it all kind of initially evolved just from that initial scene where the movie opens up and you kind of just went from there.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do that since probably college. I really love that idea and just kind of thinking of the process of it. And whatever reason that idea really stuck with me for a long time.
That's amazing. But as far as, and I'm a big horror fan, myself, so I was really curious because I love the horror elements in the movie. So I was curious to hear kind of your thoughts as far as what were the inspirations for you as far as like filmmakers and just other horror films that might have inspired New Life.
For sure. I think a couple big ones are Roman Polanski's Repulsion. Um, I love that film because we follow like one character and we're like with her and we're kind of like, you know, sympathetic to her. And then by the middle of the movie, you're like, wait, who is this person? What are these choices they're making? What the fuck is happening? Another film really inspired by The Fly, like David Cronenberg's remake. Obviously, practical effects. Anyone who watches this film will be able to tell I'm a big David Cronenberg fan. But what I love that's unique to that film is once you get away from some of the greatest practical effects of all time, it's a story about two people who fall in love, and then one is forced to watch this person they fall in love with like decay in front of them,
Yeah.
and it's this really powerful imagery, and Gina Davis's performance is, obviously she's horrified by what's happening, but there's also this like sense of heartbreak, and they do so much work, like invisible work, setting up that you're rooting for them as a couple, that I really love. And so those two films, and then obviously like I love The Fugitive. That's all over this film, and but yeah, I think those like horror wise, those are probably two really big ones.
That's probably like one of my favorite things with the horror genre too, is that there's really so much that you can do. And this is, I mean, a good example of just genre bending, multiple genres in this one film. But there's so many different like subgenres and stuff and different topics that you can tackle in horror. A lot of times, I mean, sure, you have like your kind of just fun, campy, horror films that you have out there, but this is a good example of what you're, kind of able to do with that. So were you when you were casting for the film, when you saw Hayley and Sonya, what did you see with them that you kind of knew that you had the two, main characters of the film, and what was it like collaborating with them?
Well, we went to Sonya. I've been a fan of Sonya's work for a little bit, and I was watching For All Mankind and her performance as Molly Cobb in that film, and she is phenomenal, and I recommend anyone watch that movie. But I felt like that level of someone really dedicated their career being a professional, and For All Mankind, she we see a vulnerable side with her husband, right? But it's really like her working. It's just like this, like kind of working on a heroic level. So I loved that balance she really struck with that character of someone who's dedicated, cold, like cool professional, but also has this like vulnerability. And I knew whoever was going to take on the Sonya or the Elsa's role would need to do that, because she's like the stone cold, like professional, like the samurai, like, whatever, like this is like almost meditative, but then her world is like totally falling apart. And she's strong enough not to let it completely cripple her, but we need to see elements of it. And
Yeah.
when she does crack, it needs to be like subtle. So it's such a fine dance. And Sonya crushed it. And then Hayley, we ended up auditioning probably over 200 people for that role.
Oh wow.
And what I loved about Hayley is like that character again, the core idea of this film, like it opens up with a young woman covered in blood with a black guy. And so the audience is going to project so many ideas on why that is, what
No
happened,
idea.
right? And so, and her character is really important where I wanted her to be someone like that could be your good friend or your good friend's younger sister or your neighbor or your classmate, and so someone who's kind of like that you're rooting for, that you want to help, and so I think like physicality, Hayley really you know does that as well. But then we auditioned her for like the big emotional climax scenes, and I was so blown away by her performance. Like it's so raw, it's so real. And this is her first film, but she's been working, since her early teens. I think she's done like 300 episodes of soap operas, and
Yep.
she is such a force. And so her level of craft, on top of her just being this perfect character, and like her physical work where she's just like kind of walking around, and we just kind of like feel for the character, made her just the standout, of course.
Those references are what you're saying, and after seeing the film, I could totally see why you went with both of them because I think exactly what you said there. Just their performances, both of them were amazing, and those characters, they're different, women at different stages in their life, but at the same time, they have similarities between, the situation that's going on. So yeah, I loved the performances. As far as this being like your feature debut. I'm curious as far as like what did you learn from the process of making New Life that you feel is going to help you going forward in your future career as a filmmaker?
I think that's a great question. I mean, the thing, you work in production long enough, that this is like a big team sport, and you live and die by your collaborators. And this film was such a small budget and so ambitious in scope, and it could really be only pulled off if we had people who like believed in the project and kind of put themselves in it. So there's a lot of lessons learned there about how to give people autonomy to express themselves, and kind of like move this ball forward in a way that they felt proud about, and how to create a culture on set that invited collaboration and working hard. And so that was great, and I think a lot of the successes in the film were successes that took place there, and I think that's a place I want to grow. I think craft wise, the name of the game with directing is blocking. Like how do you visually tell a story? And so there's a ton of lessons I learned in this film. I think probably one of my favorite sequences in the film is just her kind of like walking up the stairs, right? And then
Yep.
the audience knows what's going to be on the other side of the door. She doesn't know. You kind of stay in that moment, and like you can really create a sense of dread, and it does a lot by doing a little. So I really love that sequence. But I think that's a really big area that I'm going to be kind of exploring in my next work. And then script wise, this film is really, it's there's like fun elements. I think it's like it's tense and it's a thriller. It's cool. It's a little sober. I think in my next film I want a little bit more of my personality. So I think there's some opportunity there as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was such a great experience, and I can't wait to just explore kind of different work and kind of still in the thriller horror zone, but tell different stories.
Perfect. Well, hey, I mean, I love like movies, film in general, but horror is like probably my favorite genre, like in overall. So, congratulations again on the film. Just to kind of like wrap things up, and I'm really looking forward to what your next project's going to be.
Cool, Pat. Really appreciate it. Love the background.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, John. It was great talking to you today.
Oh yeah, you too. See ya.
Have a good one.